The following excerpts are submitted by Patricia Daily-Lipe and are taken from her book Messages from Nature. She has already received many positive reviews, which I am now quoting. In this complex world, it is particularly refreshing to find a writer able to help us stop, look, reflect, and learn invaluable life lessons that only nature can teach us. I highly recommend this book. The citations, the etymological meditations, the allusions to Desjardins' writing together with Steiner's, are the heart of things and the expression of moral courage in an immorally polluted world. And finally, quoted from Patricia herself, "In this little poetic tale, change the she to he and it could be Sweet William. He and I spent hours wandering through the hills and streams of the Blue Ridge." You can't wait for inspiration. You have to go after it with a club. Jack London. I can smell the mountains, the crisp, fresh air, and the scent of Blue Ridge wildflowers. The opposite of love is not hate, but despair. Coming to the mountains renews my enthusiasm for life. Creative juices soar. Now, everything is perfect. Traipsing through brush, I taste dew falling from leaves, glistening on grass, and breathe in moist morning air while morning mist hovers over the ground. My pup and I start our stroll. She chose this trail, a tokine tour under trees. Scampering ahead, she stops, checks on me. I seize her spirit, run and catch up. Now, everything is perfect. How do we measure intelligence? Recently, I overheard someone comparing dogs to people. Their methodology of comparison used intelligence as the factor. My question then is, how do you measure or define intelligence? Does compassion or empathy fit into this equation? Sweet William was my wonderful, faithful companion. An English black and white cocker, he was my shadow. One day I noticed his stool was white. I made an appointment with a vet, but at the last minute was not able to take him. My daughter took William to the doctor instead. They took a sample of the stool and sent it to a laboratory. This was on Friday. By the end of the following week, I had not heard from the vet, so I called. They had forgotten to send the sample, they said. Besides, the lab was closed for the weekend, but no worry. William seemed fine now, didn't he? At that point, he did. However, we had a trip to take. I had rented a U-Haul truck to deliver some furniture to my father's house in North Carolina. It was a long drive from Charlottesville, Virginia to Spruce Pine, North Carolina. Of course, Sweet William was coming, but I also took along my daughter's Doberman. The whole drive down, William cuddled next to me on the seat. The Dobie stayed on the floor. We stopped twice at rest stops. Both times, William drank an entire bowl of water and seemed unwilling to saunter around the dog parks. We arrived late, leaving the unloading until morning. William normally slept at the foot of my bed. That night, he chose not to and let the Dobie take his spot. In the morning, I woke up with a start. Something was wrong. I looked across the room and there was Sweet William leaning strangely against the wall. His eyes looked dazed, so I approached him very quietly and slowly, afraid of frightening him. He was postured as if being tied against the wall, almost rigid. Not a comfortable position. When I reached out to pat his side, he cringed. Immediately I knew he was in pain. I called the vet and got his emergency number. He would meet us at the clinic. The Doberman was left at the house while I ran across the street to borrow the neighbor's car to take William. Taking the U-Haul would have been impossible since it was still unpacked and the cab was far too high for a pup in pain. Coming down the neighbor's walkway, there was William walking very slowly up the hill just to be with me. It was painful to watch. He would not let me carry him. It was difficult getting him into the car, but somehow I did as the tears welled up in my eyes. Fortunately, the veterinary hospital was close. We arrived in minutes. William was immediately placed on the operating table and a tube was put in his side. He was dehydrated and in severe pain. The doctor said he could not determine the cause of his problem until the pain was under control. He had more to say, but I did not hear him. I was focused on my brave little man lying on the cold steel table. He asked that William be left with him for the day, and possibly the night, so that he could do some tests. I had no choice. I went home to the Dobie and made myself busy unpacking the truck. In the afternoon, I made a visit to the vet. William was in a cage with an IV attached to his side. I spent about an hour on my knees talking to him through the bars. His sweet eyes focused on me and almost shifted back and forth as if to say, "I'm all right. Please don't worry." The other dogs in the clinic were respectfully silent. That evening, my son and a friend came from college to help unload the truck. We had no food in the house, so we stopped to have pizza and then went to the hospital. It was locked. No visits possible with William until morning. The boys chose sleeping bags to sleep by the fire in the living room. I retired to the bedroom with Jesse the Dobie. The vet was supposed to call if there was any change when he went that night to check the animals. Nevertheless, even with Jesse at the foot of my bed, I found it very hard to go to sleep. The lights were off, leaving only flickers from the fire reflecting on the walls leading to the living room. Just as I was dozing off, Jessie leapt off the bed. She dashed into the living room and raced from one end to the other, waking up the boys and terrifying me. Then, just as sudden, she came back to my room, jumped on the foot of the bed, curled up, and immediately fell fast asleep. Within seconds, the telephone rang. It was the veterinarian. William had just passed away. When I told the doctor about Jesse's performance, he replied that he had heard of this kind of thing happening before. "You see," he said, "William just passed over to say goodbye." The autopsy revealed that indeed the white stool had been a warning, though probably too late to do anything. The liver and kidney were practically non-existent. It was amazing she had lasted this long. We suspect he had raided a trash can in our Charlottesville neighborhood, and a poison had been part of its contents. This poison had slowly eaten away his insides. With the boys' help, we dug a grave on the hillside below the house. It was a lovely setting, with overhanging trees and flowering bushes all around and a vista of the mountain peaks in the distance. Although William's body is buried in North Carolina's Blue Ridge, we know his soul has moved on. Perhaps he'll come live with me again, but as another dog. So, how do we measure intelligence? Empathy, compassion, endurance, and loyalty. With such standards, do you think people can measure up to dogs? The following excerpt is submitted by Stuart Schott, taken from his book Henry on Fire. He is published as simply Stuart, and he's included a brief intro for his submission, which is actually chapter 10 of his book. His intro reads as follows. In this excerpt from Henry on Fire by Stuart, Henry is on his first date of his middle school relationship with Tanya. It's a Friday night school dance. The relationship will last all the way until the following Wednesday. At the end of the piece, Henry refers to subordium and altara. Subordium is Henry's word for the boredom of life in the suburbs. Altara is the alternate world he visits every night when he falls asleep. This is Chapter 10 of Henry on Fire by Stuart Schott. After a few dances, Tanya and I headed to the concession stand for nachos and soda. Fred came up behind me saying he had no money. Fortunately, my mom gave me money and I had enough to help Fred out. Tanya and I found a table and sat down. Fred, Gwen, Jamal, and Angela came over to join us. Jamal and Angela couldn't have sat any closer if they had sat on the same chair. The conversation paused and Fred got nervous. His mouth started running faster than his brain. First, he talked about Coach and Mrs. Ridley, and he wondered if Mr. Ridley knew about them dancing. He then claimed one of the football players had a flask of liquor, and he would spike your drink for $1. Fred had not seen the flask, nor did he know the player's name, but he swore to the truth of the story. I wanted to shut him down before he found a new subject, so I said, "I'll give you $0.25 for each slice of jalapeno you can eat without taking a drink." Fred jumped on my offer. "Get your money out because I'm going to take it all." Jamal came up out of their cocoon to say, "I think he needs to wait 15 seconds between each jalapeno." Jamal is always ready to create rules for a game, even where none are needed. He also has a watch that does 25 different things. His watch can tell you the time in 3 different time zones, be an alarm clock, and serve as a stopwatch. Jamal would also want me to mention it can accurately perform all these tasks from 100 feet underwater or up into stratosphere. So Jamal decided to time 15 seconds between each jalapeno. A small crowd gathered for the game. Jane from science class said, "Fred, don't do it, it's just a silly bet." A few of the other girls joined in with cautions about getting sick and burning holes in his stomach. All the guys said go for it. So Fred, with a smile on his face, ate the first one, commenting, "Delightful." Jamal, with the stopwatch, counted 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Still with a smile, Fred ate the second one. With less confidence, he said, "Better than the first." Jamal counted in Spanish. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Fred started looking through the tray as if searching for just the right jalapeno. "Quit stalling," Travell called out. Fred popped the third one into his mouth. Even in the dim light, his face was visibly red. Jamal counted in French. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Gwen grabbed Fred's arm and said, "Don't be silly, Fred, stop this right now." Jamal, trying to sound like an official announcer, said, "Does the contestant wish to continue?" Fred went for the fourth one. He swallowed without even chewing. He began to perspire. Jamal counted in Esperanto. "Ok, now, dec, dec unu, dec du, dec tri, dec cavar." But before he got to 15, Angela, in a surprise move, grabbed the tray with the remaining jalapenos, marched over to the trash can, and dumped them in. All the girls applauded, and they followed her to the other side of the gym. As soon as Fred finished chugging down his soda, he held out his hand to me, saying, "Where's my $1?" Rather than point out I had given him $5 earlier, I gave him $1. Fred, Jamal, Travell, Dante, and some other guys started to replay the whole Great Jalapeno contest. As I moved away, Fred boasted, "If the concession stand wasn't closed, I would eat 4 more." I guess I was more interested in Tanya than I thought. In chess and in life, I have been thinking more about my strategies. If the purpose of the dance was to be with the girls, then we sabotaged our own mission. No, I sabotaged my mission. I moved slowly around the edge of the gym and came up behind Tanya. I tapped her on the shoulder, gave her Henri's smile, and motioned for her to step back from the group. "I'm sorry for starting that ruckus. I wanted to quiet Fred down." "You wanted to quiet him down by setting him on fire?" Obviously, I didn't think things through. "It was a little funny," she said with a smile. Mr. Michael's voice came on the speakers, interrupting our reconciliation. "This is the last dance of the night. This one is the slow one we've all been waiting for, so don't be shy." Tanya and I and 24 other couples took to the dance floor as the evening ended. Coach and Mrs. Ridley were one of the other couples. I was Henry on fire in Subordium. Now sleep, now Altara.